Hey guys, I just got an email from some folks that live right near me, and they have a 2-year-old Gypsy horse that they're having some trouble with. She's kind of being a lot of horse for them. They have to sedate her to get her feet done. They tried trailer loading her and she ended up flipping over a couple times, so they need some help. I need to get down there and see what's going on. Everybody would like it if all the horses came out of the box understanding that idea that if you're calm, your horse will be calm, but just because you're calm doesn't guarantee that they're calm. That's usually not a good response.
This is Elise. She's going to be 2 in a couple days, or about a week. I was pretty good with her until she learned she could pull back, and then it just went downhill from there. She went over backwards once and twice actually, so I mean completely over.
Just when you're trying to lead her? And
yeah, her feet, I mean you can pick up her front feet, but her back feet, I guess what it started was I was drugging her to get her feet done, and then I couldn't even get the drug in her, and she learned then to pull back, and so that's where it went south.
So first I just want to make sure I can kind of yield the hindquarters. Getting a hindquarter yield is really important, and she's yielding her hindquarters, but it's real rigid and bracey in the movement. Mm-hmm. And the reason we yield their hindquarters is when a horse becomes afraid or defensive, they want to engage their hindquarters and be ready to leave, and that's where they run backwards or rearing or running off, things like that. So it's not a matter of just doing the technique. It's all, see how much softer that was? Mm-hmm. It's also getting it with softness. So if she becomes upset or bothered, then we can use that as a strategy to recover. And there she's kind of licking and chewing. So the idea is also that there's pressure right now while she's moving, and then when I stop and she stands still, she gets relief standing still. Because you were saying part of the trouble you have is trying to handle her feet is she didn't want to stand still.
Right.
And so there's lots of little moments that I try to release them to the standstill versus just asking them to stand still. I'm just kind of testing out her yields here with the halter at first. There we go. This is kind of the baseline. See there, she kind of got a little bit like, oh, I'm gonna just push on that. So there's that little run backwards thought. So it's interesting, it was kind of good until we tried to move the forequarters. And what's slightly interesting about that is when horses are more dominant with their front end, if they don't want to move their front end, usually they have a little more dominant thought. They're having a harder time seeing the human as the leader. When they don't want to move their hindquarters, usually they're more afraid. That was better, but she could also just not know. Hey guys, I'm excited to tell you about a must-attend event for 2023. I'm talking about the Horseman Symposium. I'm bringing in a couple of my mentors, guys you may not have heard of, but they are absolutely world-class at what they do, and they are some of the best horsemen in the world. I'm referring to Doug Jordan, who is a Cutting Horse Hall of Famer, and Bernd Heilbronn, who is a incredible dressage trainer and instructor. You guys don't want to miss this. They're going to show us how to create a better partnership with our horse all the way through performance. I'm going to be working with some problem horses that are going to be really exciting, and a couple of my buddies are coming in and they're going to be starting some colts, so we're going to cover everything from A to Z with horsemanship. You don't want to miss this event, September 23rd and 24th. I'll leave a link in the description below to get your tickets. I'll see you guys there. But anytime like things that I want to do or things that I see as like a maneuver, so the idea is that I'm going to build some communication and do some exercises with her that are theoretically going to be harder than picking up her feet or going in the trailer, so that those things are the easier thing.
Okay.
What doesn't, basically anything you really want your horse to do, they see as a trap. Like that's the trap, making her stand still to hold her feet. And because we get really focused on that, and then they feel more trapped. So if we do a bunch of other things around that and release them on those things, it can be a lot more palatable for them.
Sure.
So let's test a little confidence thing here. I'm just going to see if I can throw the end of the rope over her. There we go. And the idea behind this is I want her to learn to read my intention. And right now my energy is low. And so my intention is for her to be calm and accept this rope being thrown over her. But the energy of the rope is a lot. So she has to learn to kind of see through that and read me instead of reading the rope. And so a lot of the confidence things that we do is not just about the tool, it's about them reading our energy.
Sure.
And so I try to find a lot of different ways to do that, but she's handling that pretty well, so this is going good. And so for me, these are fundamentals that I do with every horse. It doesn't matter what really the project that's in front of us is, whether it was starting them to ride or starting them to drive or you name it. They have to give to steady pressure. They have to understand the difference between rhythmic pressure and rhythmic motion. So these are fundamentals, and I have a series of this on my Patreon page. And it's one of the most popular series I did, and we might actually be able to add this video to it as well, because I think a lot of people enjoy seeing a horse that's pretty green, learning kind of some of the basic skills. Because a lot of times people buy a horse somewhere and the horse was used to their program, but the horse doesn't necessarily have a great foundation. It just got comfortable with one set of pattern.
Doing.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this is something that can be kind of a common language. I'm going to see if she'll get more committed to leaving. So what I did there is I allowed her to keep drifting, and then when she was more committed and turned away from me, I set a boundary and brought her in. And I did that on purpose, because if she's already learned to kind of pull away from you and push through pressure, if I am always in a good spot and always up by her head and controlling her, it's not going to have as much depth of meaning. So in other words, that boundary that I set there was more than me just doing this.
Right.
And so that built a little more depth of understanding there. So a lot of times training is about kind of setting up good learning opportunities, you know, because right there I was in a good position. Everything was slow. I wasn't, you know, she didn't just react to something that surprised me. I set it up, I waited, I got ready, set a boundary, and those can be really powerful training moments. And so I was kind of, since she's already learned to pull away, I know she's going to go to that well again at some point.
Right.
But I'd rather set up those little learning opportunities now when things are all under my kind of control at the moment, versus when we get in the middle of trying to trailer load her or handle her feet. You know, it can get harder for me to set up a more strategic situation. So now I'm going to get a little bossy to her, and I'm going to ask her to yield away from me in a couple different ways. We'll ask her to back up out of my space here. And so that's like me just being the alpha horse, walking up and saying, hey, that's my spot. I want that pile of hay right there. And she yielded to that, no problem. There was no resistance. So you'll see me just alternate a lot between putting pressure on her, asking her to yield, and then going back and petting her and just saying, hey, when I'm relaxed, you're relaxed. Like, there's none of the, I'm not going to ambush you with anything. This is not a surprise. You're going to know what's coming. Horses hate to be surprised. And so when I'm teaching them a yield, I always bring the pressure on very slowly to give them a chance to move off of it. So here, even though she's moving her hind feet and I've walked a full circle around her, those front feet haven't stepped over until right there. So by me being consistent with that, she's hopefully going to learn that there was a connection to moving her front feet that time, not her hind feet. So whether I use the feel of the halter or the stick, if I connect it to those feet, then she gets a more sure of what I was asking for there. And that's that little escape move that she's kind of learned.
Right.
Even if the fence is in the way, we'll just back around here and we'll keep going. And a lot of people lose focus on what yield they were trying to do. And through all that commotion, I'm still asking for that same move until I get that step over. And she kind of thought about a couple little steps right there. And we got a step right away. All right, now we're gonna try something a little harder. We're gonna ask her to go in a circle. Have you ever asked her to circle before?
No.
All right, first time. So the way I'm going to do this, I think this is really important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a sequence of cues. And whether she goes or doesn't go, I'm going to still go through the sequence of cues, and she's going to start to see what's coming. I got her far enough away that if she takes off, I can get out of the way and not get kicked. So that's kind of step one. Step two is I'm going to point and give her a direction. So she feels that little feel in the halter there, which she gave to. Now I'm going to lift the stick up. So very clear, like see her notice that, like, oh, something changed. Now I'm going to circle this at her. Maybe 3 times, and then I'm going to touch her with it. And I touched her just hard enough that she went, what was that? What happened there? And pretty soon she's going to figure out that, and I have to do it firm enough that it makes her uncomfortable. So she looked uncomfortable when I did that.
Yes.
If she wouldn't have changed expression, it wouldn't have been any different than me just throwing this over her and feeling like that. So here we go again. I'm going to point, lift, I'm going to swing this. And then I reset, I come back to neutral. This is what keeps them from getting too fired up, because it's not just pressure, pressure, pressure. When she finally leaves and goes there, it's going to be her choice. Not I just pressured her until she did it. Point, lift. And this is kind of the challenging spot that you've run into, is instead of her trying to solve the puzzle, she just decides, okay, well, if that's how it is, I'm just gonna do something, escape it, evade it. I hope you can appreciate the difference between her making the decision to
Yes.
finally leave
Yeah.
versus me just
Whipping
spank,
it.
spank,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
pressure, more pressure. I would just get her so defensive and locked up that we'd come out here and we'd say we had a fight with her or we had a come to Jesus meeting. And so a lot of times, I'm not saying that things don't get challenging at times, they do, but there's a lot of missed opportunities that I see when people are gonna try to make a horse do something. It's like, you know, horses, she wants to get along if she can be comfortable with what we're asking her to do and if she can understand what it is we're asking her to do. If you put those two things together, a horse will do anything you want. So I want her to think forward, but I don't want her to think pull away either. And this is exactly what you said was going to happen. It's like she's fine if you just stand around petting her, but ask her to do something, and then she just has that. And all that is a prey animal instinct, a survival instinct. That's all that she's going to. And so we just got to help her understand pressure better. And as she learns to understand pressure better, she won't go to that as strong or as often. So now we'll try the other side. We'll see if she understood everything and anything. Ooh, we'll take that. So now I've tapped her with the string a few times. So now I'm going to go back, and that's again why I started with the idea of energy versus intention. Now my energy is back down. Can she be okay with me throwing this string over her back? And can she read my energy is low now, or my intention? I guess the energy is high because the string's moving, but my intention for her to move is low. And, you know, everybody would like it if all the horses came out of the box understanding that idea that if you're calm, your horse will be calm. But just because you're calm doesn't guarantee that they're calm, as you can see. Might have changed my opinion here to high spirit for too long.
She's probably...
So we're going to break this down into a little more bite-sized piece because she's kind of locked up into a prey animal thought here. So we're going to yield her hindquarters to kind of get her back. That's the recovery strategy because that didn't seem achievable, what I was trying to do. So yield the hindquarters, try to recover, and now I'll make it a little easier. I'll just go back and just try to pet her with the stick and string. So you can kind of see the method to the madness there. It's like, that's why I go to try those things first ahead of time to hopefully go back to them. Because a lot of people would look at that and they would think, oh, she's now afraid of the stick and string. You spanked her with it, now she's terrified of it. Not quite.
Yeah.
It was more that she was more locked up into a stronger prey animal mindset than it was that she was that afraid of the string. At her age and stage of training, getting her used to steady pressure is one of the most important parts. Because that's exactly what you're having trouble with, you know, with the farrier, even using steady pressure, probably to lead her into the trailer, her running backwards through it. And so I try to just pepper in a lot of yields with steady pressure. And to be honest, for me, most of the stuff that we're doing with her here is more about taming than training. Taming to me is teaching the horse to not go to we're teaching them we're having a conversation, not that it's life or death for every situation. She goes, this is life or death. It's like, no, this isn't. This is like, can you go in a circle for me or not, you know? And so before I ever tried training a horse, and training again would be trailer loading, farrier preparation, saddling, driving, you name, you know, anything that we want them to do, that's training. I don't try to train them until they're tame. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you have a horse that's not tame, there's plenty of horses that are getting rode around that are not tame.
Yeah.
And one little thing happens and that horse is ready to just break in half, and that's one of the indicators, you know, they're not tame. So again, this is that get a horse used to steady pressure. I'm not asking her to move forward off of it. I'm asking her to wear it, to just be okay with it hanging there. And so it's like, to me, if they can't pass this, I'm not ready to crawl under there and handle the hind feet.
Right.
But I do think she did a good job of keeping it together there. She didn't totally panic. Now we're gonna make it a little bit harder. Now I'm gonna put it around the hind leg. What are you laughing about? Now you're making me now you're making me nervous. That's usually not a good response. So I'm not holding it to try to make her stop. I'm putting a feel until she stops. And the idea is that her giving to it and softening there, she got softer, that's where the relief is. But you kind of see it's like getting a little harder to get her to go to that strong reaction because she's getting tamer and she's learning that she's not ever found relief while me working with her for going to that spot of escaping.
Right.
But her trying to figure it out has equaled relief many times. All right, we're gonna give her one more test. And ironically, that was the test. So that's the test, is to have the horse wear the rope and to turn around and face you. So just kind of get her started by tipping her nose away. We call this turn, face, and follow. And the idea is just putting her in a bind and teaching her to work out of that bind. And then follow out of it. So she passed those really well. Oh yeah. So I want to play a little game with her because she's confident enough for me to have her feet up, but she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
You know, and so what I'm going to try to teach her, is that you can have your foot back, but I'm going to make it uncomfortable to have it back. It'd actually be more comfortable for you to just let me hold it. So drive those hindquarters around a little bit. I'll try to come back to kind of sort of where I was at, and then bring my energy back down. Come in here and rub her. And this is actually good. I'd rather teach her this on a front leg than the hind leg. And you'll notice I didn't get after her right away. I gave her a little time. I wanted her to be sure that the relief is right there with the foot up in the air. It's pretty easy to put pressure on a horse too early, and then they associate that pressure with having her foot in the air instead of the feet being on the ground.
Right, right.
She does have some paws on her though, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Now, so for the hind legs, the first thing I'm going to do is what I call a leg massage. We're just going to rub her legs down, not try to pick them up. Then I'm going to retreat, and I want her to get really comfortable with me just approaching it. So I just kind of want her to grow some roots and get comfortable with me going from the front foot to the hind foot. So pick up the front foot, come back here, leg massage. Looks pretty settled.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
It's amazing.
She gave me that foot a little easier. You know, either you could stand there and let me just hold your foot in the air quietly.
Yeah.
Or I could be driving your hindquarters around and you're on hot lava. Then I like to hold underneath their foot and try to keep rubbing their leg.
Wow. Good girl.
You know, it's easy for us to see the feet, but if you also just see that she's kind of grown some roots and she's pretty content now to be there. She's amazingly flexible. And there, that tells me my timing has been good because she's not scared of me when I put it down. I can rub on her there. If she were to panic and leave, then that would tell me too closely to her pulling her foot away. I went to spanking, and some of the credit towards the spanking got for me having the foot in the air.
Sure.
There we go.
Awesome.
Progress, not perfection, but it's a good place to start. So can you talk us through what you thought of the training session there?
Well, I was amazed. I mean, didn't think we'd ever get her back feet picked up, but it worked perfect. I mean, it took a little time, but
yeah,
and she learned a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us come out and
Well,
work
no,
with her.
it was great. I mean, obviously she needed something, that's for sure.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much.